So for those of you that I haven't met yet, I am Alanna Cajthaml. I'm the CFO and VP for Finance and Business Strategy here at APU. And I want this session really to be just kind of a primer for understanding of university finances, why we are constantly talking about the budget and where things stand, and also just give you some insight into the great progress that we've made over the last few years. So as we dive into understanding our budget, there is actually a document on HR Total Access that walks you through a number of these items. So if you haven't seen it already, feel free to go on and look for it. It's only about 2 to 3 pages. It's a pretty quick read, and it gives a pretty good overview just of how our budget is made up. So I want to highlight a few key pieces of data. The first one being our revenue. So this is looking at our revenue from a gross expense or gross revenue perspective. And we're structured very similarly to a number of other institutions in the sense that most of our revenue comes from student dollars, whether that be their tuition, fees, room and board, bookstore, one card office, all of those items. So about 96% of our total budget is funded from students. So that is why enrollment is such a key conversation when we talk about where we've been, where we're going, why any change, good or bad, in enrollment has a significant impact on our finances. The remaining 4% is split between two different categories. One is the university endowment. So every year we take a 4% draw. It generates about $2 million for us to go into the operating budget. And this is why endowment growth is so critical, because 4% off 70 million versus 4% off $500 million is a very different number. And it's why one of the things in renewal is endowment growth and continuing to be very strong there. The other 2% comes from the university fund. So that is unrestricted donor giving that is raised every year through the advancement team. They work very hard from July 1st to June 30 to try to secure as much as possible. And that is dollars just to go towards supporting the institution in whichever way we need it to go for that year. It's not given with any sort of restriction or anything outside of, we want APU to be able to use this. As you saw earlier in Dr. Ferguson's presentation, we had some record numbers in giving this last year, which was really critical in helping us just end the year financially strong. So then if we look at our expenses, this is also looking at it through a gross perspective. We are predominantly staff and faculty and payroll heavy. That is very typical for higher education. Over 53% of our total gross operating budget is personnel. So that's your actual base pay, it's your taxes, benefits, all those pieces combined. When you take out scholarships, we're at about 75% of our remaining budget is personnel. So very, very personnel heavy, with a blend of faculty and staff are slightly more, faculty and adjunct are slightly more than staff and administration in terms of the total allocation. And about 30 million a year is allocated towards our benefits. So benefits are just a very costly component of our total personnel budget and something that we're constantly trying to find that right balance of how do we be generous with the benefits we're offering while also monitoring the financial realities of the institution. Our scholarships make up about 24% of our operating budget. Those are dollars funded through the tuition dollars, typically called discount rates. So you'll hear that thrown around quite a bit, which means there's only about 23% left for all the other operations of the institution. So that would be things like our debt service, our utilities, travel, supplies, anything that you're using in your day-to-day office or classroom life, technology, all of those pieces. So when we think back to either budget cuts in 2018, even dealing with this COVID year, that's why you're seeing so much land on those personnel lines. It's because that's where majority of our budget is. There just isn't that much to actually cut in the operational lines. And a number of the things in our operations, we can't cut. We can't say we're not going to make our debt payments, even though it would be very nice if we could not. So the thing that I will say, our structure here, both the revenue and the expenses, very typical to a number of higher ed institutions. The difference and kind of positive that we have is our enrollment mix. We are blended with traditional undergraduate, professional undergraduate and graduate. And that is part of what has helped us stabilize over these last few years of just constant change. The challenge that comes with that is a number of other institutions that are predominantly traditional undergraduate are trying to get to the mix that we have. So competition on all fronts is just continuing to rise year over year. And then affordability is a major concern. How do we allow any student that wants an APU degree to come to APU and not be saddled with a tremendous amount of student debt? And all those factors really create this pressure cooker that we've been living in for a while. So those are kind of some of the things that we've been working through really since 2018 and will continue to work through with renewal. The next thing I want to show you is our expense by division. So we, in effect, have 15 major divisions that comprise the operating budget. 2 of them are our interest on indebtedness and our scholarships. So those are kind of outside of an individual vice presidential area, but the rest are broken down by VP areas. Academic affairs is the largest division, which makes sense. We are an academic institution. That's where most of the resources are landing. They make up just about 38% of the total budget. And when you add in the scholarships, that takes it to about 60%. So majority of our resources are going to students in the classroom, having them be a part of the academic structure here at APU. And then the remaining 40% goes towards all the other administrative pieces. So whether that be student affairs, IMT, university relations, advancement, human resources, all of those items get blended in and share that remaining 40% of the university budget. So this next slide shows you the unduplicated headcount over time. This is a really, I think, insightful graph because it shows you over the last 10 plus years where our enrollment has been by the various populations. So we have traditional undergraduate in blue, professional undergraduate in green, and graduate in orange. What's very interesting in this, and you'll see kind of where we've grown, where we're starting to shrink, where we're potentially dropping, is we've stayed above 10,000 headcount this whole time, but the mix has changed. We're seeing a drop from, in its heyday, over 6,000 traditional undergraduates down to 3,750. That's a significant change when you consider the price on each undergraduate tuition bill versus the price on some of the other graduate and professional programs. But we've also seen growth in graduate and professional over the course of time. So this is an area that, as Heather and her team dive into the strategic enrollment plan, becomes just a really critical set of data for us to figure out where are we going, where do we think we're going to land in the future, and what sort of academic program mix do we need to continue to sustain this and grow this. One important piece of information around traditional undergraduate is if you have a good year or a bad year with your incoming freshmen, it lives with you for 4 years. So a lot of the decline you're seeing over the last few years is we were graduating out larger classes, but bringing in smaller classes. So we weren't replacing at the same rate that we were losing them, which is why you're seeing kind of year over year decline. One of the improvements we've made financially is enrollment management and finance are very closely aligned now. We set the budget goals and enrollment goals together. We stay in step all throughout the summer and the course of the year, so that way we are not hit with any surprises if enrollment is better or worse than what we originally thought when we forecasted out. So one of the things that I think we'll continue to bring forth to the community as we talk about the university finances is tying this graph to then our total budget. So that way you can really see and measure as we're going through the years or talking about, hey, next year we're projecting enrollment growth in this category or we're projecting decline. You can then really see how these two pieces play together. So we have some challenges and opportunities ahead of us here. The challenges are a lot of the same challenges that other higher ed institutions are facing. And we are highly tuition and enrollment dependent. That doesn't necessarily get fixed over time because that is in some ways just the nature of higher ed. But it's how do we become less operationally dependent? So you'll notice in renewal, there's lots of conversation about strategic enrollment plan. There's also conversations about growing the endowment, bringing in endowed scholarships, those sorts of items which just helped to take some pressure off the university's operating budget. It doesn't mean that we're giving out less aid. We might even be giving out more, but less is coming from our student tuition dollars that come in. We also have the rising discount rate. This is across the board for traditional undergraduate students. And the best way to think through it is for every dollar that a student pays, right now, on average, we're discounting 50 cents. So that means we only have 50 cents to operate for every traditional undergraduate student. So it really does become a volume play a bit. In order to make up from maybe where we were, we're going to need a lot more headcount. But I think the heart of all of us is we want any student who wants to attend APU to be able to attend. So how do we keep up affordability while not eating away at the dollars coming in to support the entire institutional infrastructure? We also have increasing cost of operations. So healthcare goes up each and every year. We work to renegotiate those rates constantly, trying to keep them as low as possible in terms of the annual increase. Minimum wage is going up to $15, which then creates compression in other areas. And it's also just costly to operate in California. We've got rising costs of supplies, travel, food, anything that we touch really is going up year over year. And we need to be able to manage those increases so that we're not constantly in a season of budget reductions and cuts. We do have some opportunities. Our debt is up for restructure in April of 2023. For those of you who don't really know the university debt structure all that well, about half of our debt is held by the bank. That is the amount up for restructure in April. The other half is held with public bondholders. Both really have the same end goal. They want to be paid back. They want to be paid back with interest, and they want us to meet our current agreed covenants. The opportunity we have with restructuring the debt is kind of twofold. One, we may be able to renegotiate a better deal, which may mean better interest rates, lower payments, maybe elimination or adjustment to the covenants to relieve some pressure from our day-to-day. It also may allow us the opportunity to take on a reasonable amount of additional debt to start kicking off some of the things in renewal. Because I'm sure many of you have heard you can't cut your way to prosperity. That kind of feels like the season we've been in. And it's giving us time to pause and think, is this potentially an opportunity for us to do an infusion of cash into some very strategic initiatives that will end up paying off in a way better way than us just continuing to take away some aspects of the budget. While April 2023 may seem like a long way away, we will want this fully done, signed, agreed upon, everything, probably no later than December 2022. So we are actually kicking off the conversation this September with the Board of Trustees. So while it is kind of a long way away, we are actively working through it, and we may find that we want to enter into some sort of new arrangement prior to April, maybe right around April. We're going to continue to work through that, and as we get updates, we will be sure to communicate any significant changes. The other opportunity is we have our unique enrollment mix and multiple pathways to an APU degree. This is one of the things that I think makes APU stand apart. A number of institutions are trying to figure out how to get the enrollment mix that we have. And so our key opportunity here is how do we continue to beat out the competition, to be launching degree programs or pathways that the marketplace really wants and the students are really interested in without overburdening our financial resources. And I think the challenge, at least that I've seen with that, is there's so many great ideas coming up. How do we prioritize them? In what order do we launch them? And how do we really invest appropriately so we're launching successfully? We're also looking at total rewards compensation for staff and faculty. This is, I would say, a key tenet of where we're wanting to go. We recognize how much pressure and burden has been put on APU staff and faculty. And we not only want to get to a place of restoring some of what has existed in the past, but how do we enhance it so we can be a competitive employer, somebody that you could come to APU and have a long career and be really successful. And I would say Paula Martinez and the whole HR team is very committed to this idea and conversation, and we're really working through how to fix just a number of the issues that have existed over the years, but do so in such a way that it's sustainable so we're not yo-yoing you. Hey, we're giving you something and then we're taking it away, and then the next year you get it back and then it goes away. Because that's not good for anyone involved, and it's not fair to you as the employees to not really know the trajectory of where your career could go. And lastly, we've got renewal and new academic programs. This is a huge opportunity for us. I will say renewal is probably the third strategic plan I've been involved in, and it's the only one that I've ever seen truly daily engagement since the day it launched. Typically, you write them, you don't really talk about them until annual performance reviews, and it's kind of, oh yeah, we were supposed to get that thing done. And so this, I think, has just been so incredible to watch, just each and every one of you engaging in different ways with renewal. It really is all-encompassing of some great initiatives for the institution. And I'm even hearing, I've been on a couple calls with vendors or outside creditors or people like that, and they're bringing up to me, oh, we saw your strategic plan. It's just fantastic. We're so excited. So it is out there and people are viewing it as kind of a guiding star of where APU is going. And I think they're just watching to see how quickly we accomplish it. And we've already made some very great progress. So there have been quite a few frequently asked community questions. So I thought I would address a few of them here. And then certainly as we get into Q&A, I'm happy to talk through them. So the first one, why isn't the budget fixed already? I get this one a lot. Why aren't we done? We feel like we've been in this for so long. Can we just stop talking about the budget already? Well, part of it is it took a lot of years to get to 2018. So it's going to take some years to get out of it. The other challenge is nothing has been static coming out of that. If we could have just hit pause and said, this is going to be our enrollment, we know our revenue, these are our expenses, we could turn around and fix it in a year. But every year we're facing new challenges. We were on a great path for 2020 and then COVID came in and surprised us all and we suddenly had to dive into the budget in a way that we never thought we would. So what I will say is we have made tremendous progress on the budget. We have a fully balanced budget this year. It gives us great opportunity as we're moving forward. We have fantastic budget management going on, not only in the business office, but across every division. So we are getting there. I know it may not feel like it when you're dealing with it day in and day out, but we really have made tremendous progress. And I am hopeful that as we get to some of the stability that is on the horizon, as we get to some of the strategic initiatives, that we can get to the point that we say, it's done. It's stable. We're not going to be in this intensive a conversation for a while. The other one I get a lot, and I get it from both sides, is are the cost-saving measures equal between academics and university administration? I would say the answer to that is yes. Now, it's different. You saw staff getting furloughed, but then faculty are doing pay cuts. Everybody got hit with the 403B retirement being eliminated for the year. So while it's not identical, it is very equal. And I would say there's a commitment on President's cabinet of we don't want any one division to be feeling majority of the burden. We're trying to find ways to share it while also not halting some of the great progress that we need to make. So we really are trying to keep it equal and measured as much as possible without just blindly saying, we're cutting everybody this dollar amount and hope that you find a way to figure it out. We're really trying to be cautious in how we do all of our resource allocation. The other one I get quite a bit is if we have an operational surplus in one year, why can't we just use that to balance the budget? Why doesn't that help us in restore 403B or give out pay raises or something like that? A lot of it is because we just can't. It's highly regulated by auditors, IRS. We are very restricted in what we're able to do, but we have made some strides in this area. We have launched and gotten board approval on a university-wide surplus policy. It was in alignment with renewal. So basically 50% of the surplus, if there is one at the end of the year, is meant to go into the endowment to help us grow and satisfy that aspect of the strategic plan. The other 50% is meant to go to capital projects. So as you look down that list of things in renewal, we are hopefully going to soon be at the point where we've got dollars each year that can go towards that. And so really the concept of the university surplus is how do we continue to invest in ourselves while propelling ourselves forward? And then lastly, how do grants and restricted gifts impact the university finances? They help us a lot. So we do love grants. We do love restricted gifts. We were so excited that we had such fantastic numbers this year on not only giving, but academic and university grants. The difference with them is they're restricted in purpose. So we can't take grant dollars or restricted gift dollars and use it to fix a budget problem. But what it can do is it can help us alleviate some of the pressure on the operating budget. So my first year here, There was a very generous donor who wanted to give money to the athletics program and to a specific sport. I was then able to work with the athletics department to reduce their budget by the same amount. So in total, they were still whole, but I was able to get some relief on the university budget side because a very generous donor had stepped in to provide some support. It can also help us move the mission of the university forward. A lot of these research grants, we now can have a faculty member going out and doing research where we probably wouldn't be able to fund them at that level anytime in the near future. So that is not only enhancing their professional development, but also the status and reputation of the university. So they very much help. They are something that we will always be very excited when outside money is coming in, but we're again just highly regulated in how we use it and what we're able to do with it. Okay, so thinking through 2018 versus now, what has changed? Are we in a better spot? Have we really made progress? We have done a tremendous amount in a very short amount of time. And I think that's one of the things that I want all of you to hear. Your ability to respond to change is unlike anything I've ever experienced in all my higher ed years. You are a community that comes together, bands together well, and I just continue to be so impressed. And we're seeing it in terms of not only the financial results, but just the things we're accomplishing as an institution. So one of the things I want to bring your attention to is we do monthly budgeting, forecasting, and reporting. It is published on HR Total Access. We would love if you read it, even if it's just a quick glance every month. We post it on the 20th of every month. We also have gone through a full redesign. So if you used to look at the monthly financials and maybe it just, it was just a lot of dense financial information, this now has narrative, graphs, charts. It's really just a fantastic document. And if you were to read it, it does give you just a good check-in on what is the financial health of the institution, where are things going well versus where are maybe we struggling a little bit. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that you just make that a part of, just once a month, go on and look at it, or every other month, just take a quick read. We also have implemented better systems, which is allowing us to have a more efficient use of all of our resources. So not only is it taking some burden off of my staff so that way they can be focused on other strategic initiatives in the institution, it's also meant to eliminate a lot of the work that you typically have done in a very manual process. So we have Adaptive Insights, which is our budget planning and reporting tool. We use this for position control, budget development. We are using it quite a bit with all the budget managers. So if you are a budget manager, you're very familiar with it. If you're not, you'll see the results of Adaptive in the various reports that we publish. I will say we could not have gotten through the COVID year without a tool like Adaptive. We were every day talking through different scenarios of what it would look like. And if we had been on our old way of doing things, it would have taken weeks to be able to do some of the things that we were doing in a day or two. So it has been highly, highly helpful. We also just launched Concur, which is a travel and expense management software. I recognize a number of us probably won't be traveling for a while, but it also is used for the university credit card, any sort of expense reimbursement. What's fantastic about this is it takes a ton of the paper and manual process out. If you are submitting a receipt for something, you can upload it from your phone. It goes through the workflow automatically. It gets all the proper approvals. It is really a fantastic tool. There's training available on it, and it's something that we will continue to kind of expose you to as we go throughout the year. We also have had really open engagement with APU faculty, staff, and students. I have been so appreciative of this community that you're one that not only is interested in the financial health of the institution, which always makes someone in my position very happy, but that you're willing to share, you're willing to provide feedback, you're willing to ask good questions. And that allows us to figure out what is most important to you in terms of updates. So as we continue to go through this year, I hope that we can just continue to have those conversations. And we are a very open department. So if there's things that you've just wondered about, we want to be able to engage with you. We established our procurement department. This is meant to actually help advance the institution a bit, because we do spend a lot of money as an institution, and we've been spending it kind of in a very disconnected way, that we have the opportunity to partner with vendors to not only get better pricing, but to potentially get rebates that come back to the institution, get to be a part of consortiums and things like that, that really help us not only save, but potentially even be able to do some additional things with the same dollars we've always had. So you'll hear from the procurement team quite a bit. They are just a fabulous team, and they are very excited about just partnering with each and every one of you of how do we accomplish your day-to-day goals. We're enhancing auxiliary services. That is a division that now reports to me. Heather Snyder and I are working together. Auxiliary, in a perfect form, is meant to actually be an income source to the institution. APU struggled with that a bit. It's a blend of our enrollment has declined. It's a blend of not necessarily managing things in the best way possible. And so we're really working through on how do we enhance that, not only for the student, but also for the financial resources. And lastly, we've been getting really positive feedback from our external partners. So Moody's is our credit rating agency. You can think of them almost like your personal FICO credit score. Whatever they say we're rated at impacts our interest rate and ability to manage our debt. They have been singing our praises since I got here. They are so impressed by our ability to pivot so quickly out of crisis. They love our enrollment mix. They have been just very impressed by the results that we've shown even through COVID. And that is a huge testament. They do not owe us anything. They have downgraded a number of institutions in the midst of COVID, but they view APU as, in a lot of ways, kind of the future of higher ed. You need to not be focused on just one particular student group. You need to be servicing a number of different populations. And that has been really encouraging to me that our good work is being acknowledged. People are seeing it. So I want to just quickly throw up our FY22 balanced budget. This, along with some additional information, is also on HR Total Access. So I recommend that you take a look at it. I think there should always be openness when it comes to the budget. Obviously, we can't show you everything behind every number, especially when it comes to a number of personnel type conversations. But you should be able to know what the university budget is and how we're allocating the resources. And this is something that if you have questions on, we want to be able to talk through that with you and engage with you so that way you have complete confidence in what it is that we're doing. So in terms of stability to sustainability and what our next steps are, we keep talking about we need to get financially stable, then we need to make sure it's sustainable so we're not constantly in this cycle. And there's quite a few things that we need to do, and we're in the midst of all of them. One of them being multi-year budget and financial planning. We're in the midst of that. We are working with the board, we're working with enrollment, we're working with the academy. How do we build in appropriate metrics and projections so that way we can see where we're going? Because I would love to get APU to a point where we, for the most part, have the next 5 years budgeted. And then we do tweaks and changes as we get more certainty, but we're not every year almost starting from scratch trying to figure out how the year is going to look. We have the restructuring of the university debt portfolio. This could be a great initiative for the institution to become more sustainable as we finalize what that structure is going to look like. We have the implementation of renewal. This gives us a roadmap. We don't have to have a question of where's the institution going? What are its main priorities? We all have it and get to be a part of it. Continued strong financial stewardship. Each and every one of you has been practicing that probably since 2018, if not before. And we need to keep it up, even as maybe things become more stable or we do have access to more resources. And the metric I always use when people are asking me, is this a good use of funds? Should we be using it on something else? Is if you could look a student in the eye and say your tuition dollars goes towards this, and you feel really good about that and you think you could engage in that conversation, that's a really good indication that that is the appropriate use. If it kind of makes you uneasy or, oh, I just don't know that a student would understand that, have a conversation. Ask your supervisor, ask somebody in the finance office, is this appropriate? Is this something we should be spending money on? Because we do want to be good stewards of every dollar that comes in because the students are paying for it for a number of years in their lifetime. And then lastly, staying nimble through change. We are a community that I have seen thrive in crisis, which is just incredible. And we need to hold on to that even as we move out of crisis. We need to stay nimble. We need to stay collaborative. We need to stay very just open about where are our needs versus our wants. What do we have to do to keep advancing the institution forward? And I think if we can do that, we'll be able to make it through and get to a point that kind of all these budget woes are in the rearview mirror. So the last slide I want to show you is one that Dr. Ferguson referenced earlier this morning, and it is our endowment level. This is a huge accomplishment, especially in the midst of COVID. I don't know if you are all aware, we lost our line of credit in the 2018 crisis. So through most of COVID, my panic was, what if we run out of money? What if we need to draw? Endowment's our only source. And that just is a painful process to take from the endowment. And so the fact that we've seen such tremendous growth and have passed the $100 million mark is incredible. And this is through a blended effort of a number of different departments, strong investment strategy with the board. And it's something that my hope is in the next few years, we will just see this graph just continue to go up and up and up. And if it does that, it puts us on the right path towards being really sustainable in our finances. So up here, just for your reference, we have a number of, department-specific email addresses. So if you're ever needing something from the business office, please contact us. We do love to interact with all of you. And if you don't know who you're supposed to contact, you can just email businessoffice@apu.edu and we'll direct you to the right person. I wanted to leave some time for us to have Q&A. So I'll open it up for that so that way we can still get you out on time. So the question was, where are we at in terms of knowing program profitability? Which ones are doing well? Which ones maybe need some more work? We launched a program last year which looked at program profitability. It's currently sitting in and owned in the academic affairs area. And I know that division is doing a lot of work on it. The initial brush of the analysis was, let's look at tuition dollars received, less scholarships, less cost to teach that course, which would be the faculty or adjunct cost. And I think Rukshan and his team are trying to take it a step farther to layer in things like the leases at regional campuses and library and those sorts of items. So I would say we are very close to it. I think it's being worked on really heavily in the academic affairs area and should be something that we start to see more data coming out of in the coming months and year. So the question is, do we have emergency cash available? If we get into a situation where we need dollars, what do we have? So within the endowment, we have a blend of investment strategies, some which are very, you put it in for a number of years, but it has a decent yield, and a number of things that are far more liquid. So we, by board policy, have a certain amount of the endowment that we hold back. We still invest it, but within a day, we could have it all be cash if we really need it. And so we do have it. The difference is, I think in years past, we've kind of held it in a bank account, which then isn't really earning any money on it. So the decision was made, let's invest it to where we're getting at least a few percentage points off of it, but we can still pull from it if needed. Yeah, so it's an excellent question. So the question is, the government relief funds we got for COVID, how did it help us? What was it used for? And how does it help us moving forward? So there were 3 rounds of government funding, each for the most part structured very similarly. The first round, it was an even 50-50 split. 50% had to go into the hands of students, and you couldn't funnel it through the student account to have it pay the institution. It was direct checks to the students. The other 50% went to the institution. So for us, that helped offset the loss of revenue that we saw in auxiliary. The second round, it wasn't quite a 50-50 split. More was able to come to the institution with a portion still going to the students. So again, we use that to help offset the revenue. The third round was the one that really does help us as we move forward, which is, it was about 16 million, 15 million, somewhere in there, 50-50 split again. This time it allowed us to give the student the option of, you're getting this money and we can apply it to your student account if you sign off and agree, or it can be a check to you. So that helped the institution twofold. It still got money in the hands of students, but some of them used it to pay down their bill either for last spring or this fall, which helps us and helps them. The other 50% that stayed with the institution, we got the option. We could draw it down or we could roll it over to now this year. We did a split. We drew down part of it because we knew we need to stay bond compliant with all of our covenants, and we had some dollars we still need to make up in terms of lost revenue and COVID expense spend. But we have held on to $3 million, which sits outside our budget, to go towards all of the return to campus costs we're still facing. So we've got testing being done at the testing center. We've got cleaning and PPE materials that we need to buy. We've got some equipment that needs to go in. So what's good about that is we were in a position that we could roll over the $3 million. So that way we're not trying to bake that into this year's budget on top of everything else. So it's very helpful, but you're correct. We cannot bank on it in the future. And I think at this point, we're all highly skeptical if anything else will be coming, but it was just an absolute blessing to be able to get it. So government funds, I think, are being applied to regional centers in the sense of they have return to campus costs and things like that. Right now, anything that is a part of that $3 million funnels up through the RTC task force being managed by Chris Jennings. And so what we're trying to be cautious of is we do have a finite amount of resources. So how do we allocate it appropriately? But regional campuses are viewed just as critical of needing to be safe and protecting our students and staff and faculty who are there and funding them appropriately. Yeah, I can tell you let me pull up, I do have something on enrollment. And again, this is the projection. It will be finalized as we get through enrollment and we get to add drop. We are showing for fall 2021, the traditional undergraduate class is projected to be at 3,075 FTE. That's the budget. And so FTE is always smaller than headcount. But for budget purposes, we use FTE. And graduate and professional is projected at just shy of 127,000 units. So for those two populations, we project by unit, not headcount for budget purposes. So what we will do and what we will look to do as we kind of get to the fall update of how we're doing is then be able to show here is budgeted tuition, here's where we are, and how are we looking for the rest of the year. So far, the updates from enrollment have seemed very positive. I would say the odd thing about this year is historical trends kind of mean nothing. Students are waiting till the last minute. They're watching LA County. They're kind of playing the odds and depositing a number of different schools. So typically by this point, we can feel pretty confident about where we're going to be, but it's kind of still a guessing game. But we're excited about having students back. I think the fact that we're open is huge. And I think the thing that has impressed me is through all of COVID, we continued to meet our enrollment needs from a budget perspective. And I think that is just a testament to students' connectedness to an APU degree and their desire to be here, which is very exciting. It's how did the endowment grow from where it was up to now the 100 million? And it's a blend of the sale of the promenade allowed us to position from a physical asset that was at a set value into a sale, which was cash, that then got invested into the endowment. And we were able to invest pretty aggressively and see some good returns. There were also some new deposits, if you will, into the endowment. We have an endowed chair that we got $1 million that went into that. We've seen endowment gifts coming in throughout the course of the year. So it's promenade, endowment growth, kind of organically, plus then the growth that comes from the earnings that we're getting back. So it's a few factors all played together into one, and then we will continue to try to find new ways to grow the endowment as we move forward. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you all enjoy the lunch being provided to you. So have a good day.